Hello, I'm back with another Renpy tutorial today, and I'm going to do something a little bit different. This is going to be my first, probably like intermediate level tutorial, and this is relating to a question that I received some time ago, in which someone asked me how to handle lists in Renpy and what you can do with lists. Lists are something that I struggled with for a really long time, so I think I found a way to explain them that makes them kind of easy to grasp, and I'm going to show you a couple of specific ways to use them from within Renpy. So if you don't know what a list is a type of programming variable, which, by the way, if you haven't seen my earlier tutorials, you might want to check those out first and get the basics out of the way. Like I said before, this is kind of an intermediate tutorial. So a list is a type of variable, and as you might guess, a list is a list of things. Typically, it's a list of different values. So the values can be of any type. They can be like a number variable, or they can be a string, like a word variable. They can be a Boolean, a true-false. Pretty much any kind, and you can actually mix and match them as well inside the list. So a list doesn't have to be all string variables. It can be like 2 strings, a Boolean, and 3 numbers. You know, pretty much whatever you want with inside that list. And then there are different ways that you can use that in your programming or in your Renpy game. So, in order to declare a list, we're going to have to get into some actual Python programming, which we haven't done yet, and don't let that freak you out. This is really, really easy. This is going to be a very gentle introduction to Python. But the first thing that we have to do is we have to tell Renpy that we're about to use some Python code. Because Renpy basically is built on an extremely simplified version of Python. It does use some Python code in it, but not everything that Python does is supported natively with Renpy. So you've got to give it a command to say, hey, this is not a Renpy code. I'm about to use some actual Python code, so get ready for that. And there are 2 ways of doing that. The easiest way to do that if you're just using a single line of code is with a $sign. So shift and then the 4 key. And then that's it. That's all you have to do to let Renpy know that this line is going to be Python code. So declaring certain types of variables like lists is not supported natively from within Renpy, so if you ever declare a list, we have to go out of Renpy, let it know we're going to use Python. Again, just do that with a $sign. After that, we just come up with a name for our list, and we're going to be using different topics for conversation, and so we're just going to call this topics. Keep it nice and simple. So we say topics equals, and then we're going to use square brackets like that. And the square brackets should be right up next to your P key on your keyboard. And everything within those brackets is going to be our list. And each value in that list has to be separated by a comma. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3 string variables that are going to be 3 possible topics of conversation that we're going to go through. The first one is weather. Since it's a string variable, you have to put it in either single quotes or double quotes. You can use either one, but they have to match. So I'm just going to use single quotes, keep it a little bit simpler. So we're going to do weather, and then comma, and then Stephen. I'm going to go ahead and capitalize that. And then the third topic is Eileen, and just be sure you open and close those with either single quotes or double quotes. Separate each one by a comma, and that's it. Everything goes between square brackets. So those are our 3 different topics of conversation for our list. So the next thing you need to understand about lists is that each item in the list is given what's called an index value, or just an index. Basically, that's just a number that refers to each one of those. So you can refer to it by a number instead of by the actual name. And the numbering always starts at 0, and then it goes up consecutively. So that's another big thing to remember, is it does not start at 1, it starts at 0. So weather is going to be 0 in our list of topics, Stephen is going to be 1, and Eileen is going to be 2. So we have 0, 1, and 2 in each of our topics. All right, so in my code here, I've got a pretty much what we were working with before in my beginner topic. I've just deleted most of it, but I've got my characters declared. The scene is the BG bar. And then I'm going to show Eileen at left, and then show Eileen in the middle by default, and then Steven is going to be on the left. And then we're going to declare our topics after that. So that's all we have so far. If I were to run this, it would just show the bar, show Eileen, show Steven, and then the game would end. That would be it. Like, it would declare our topics, but we wouldn't know that. That happens behind the scenes. So let's put in a little bit of dialogue real quick. We'll start with Steven. And then, so there are a couple of different things that we could do here. We could have Eileen just say... There we go. We could talk about the weather, or about Steven, or Eileen. And actually, I'm going to go up and I'm going to change the string real quick to the weather, and you will see why in just a moment. So if we were to play that, we all know what would happen. Actually, let's go ahead and do a quick playthrough of that just so we can see that in action. I'm going to launch my project, go to start, shows the bar, shows Eileen, shows Steven. What would you like to talk about? We could talk about the weather, or we could talk about Steven or Eileen, and then game ends. Oh, actually, sorry, that's pulling up my old code, which we're about to get to next, because I didn't save this yet. There we go, let's save that. And now, when we run that... and it's got something that it doesn't like. Check the line's indentation. Sorry about that. I did a test project on this a moment ago and forgot to reset everything completely. There we go. Let's try that one more time. There it is. Bar, Eileen, Steven. What would you like to talk about? The weather, Steven or Eileen. Boom. Game ends. Back to title screen. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to change each of these topics to reference that list variable, instead of typing them in precisely. So for this project, this might be a little bit overkill, but this is going to work well for illustrative purposes. So if you were doing this in your game, maybe you can unlock different conversation topics, and then you can reference them in the list. Just store a list variable every time, like if you talk to somebody and they mention Eileen, then you add that as a topic. But until that happens, you don't know that that's going to be something that you can talk about. So, and we'll get to how to do that in a moment. But for now, I'm just going to show you how to reference those. So instead of the weather, if we want to reference a variable, we do that kind of like how we declared the list. But this is just a strictly ren'py function. If you want to refer to a variable in conversation, in the dialogue, we have to put that in square brackets. And then we're going to say... topics is the name of our variable, and then we're going to do another square bracket, and we're going to put the reference, the index number for whatever topic we want to do, or whatever value we want to reference. So it's going to be topics 0, and remember 0 is the weather, 1 is Steven, and 2 is Eileen. So inside of square brackets, you put topics, and then 0 in square brackets. And now, when we run that, we really should see nothing change. It should let me save it first. That would have looked the same. Yeah, that'll look exactly the same, but it's going to do that by referencing the variable instead of explicitly typing that in the dialogue. There we go. So we see no change, but it works differently in the programming. All right, and now let's change both of these as well. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do square brackets, topics 1, and then square brackets, topics 2. Save all of that and run that again, and we again should see no change. There we go. Exactly the same thing. Now I'm going to show you how to use that in a conversation menu. So we did menus in one of my previous videos. Be sure to check that out if you haven't. I'm going to go through this kind of quickly. So I'm going to create a menu header for each one of these. There we go. And now I'm going to do something even different. I'm going to let it only give you that topic to talk about if it is in the list of topics that we declared in the beginning. So the way that we do that is we're going to say the weather, and then before the colon that comes at the end, we're going to say if, quotes, the weather in topics. And now when we do that, it's only going to give us that to talk about if it exists in that list, which right now it does. We're going to do the same thing for this one. And then the same thing for the last one. And this whole thing that we're about to do took me a very, very long time to figure out and a ton of research, and it's really relatively simple. So hopefully this helps out a lot of you. And this is something that's used a lot in visual novels. If you want to have a conversation where you want the person to click on every single possible conversation option, but you don't want them to be able to click on the same one twice. Or if you want it to automatically go to the next section after they've said everything, this is a way that you can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some dialogue here. All right, this is going to be very, very banal, uninteresting answers, but that's okay. You can come up with something more interesting for your game. Go. All right, and the very last one. There we go. All right, so now when I run that, basically I'll just be able to talk about one of these conversation options, and then it's going to end. But we're going to do something a little bit more interesting than that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a label that we can jump to. And I'm just going to call this conversation topics. And since that is a label section, I've got to indent everything under that. So just highlight and hit the tab key. That'll indent everything over. So now, after each one of these, we're going to jump back up to conversation topics. So I'm going to add that very quick jump code there. This is much easier if you have it. You could probably either copy and paste it, or I've got code completion turned on, so it kind of guesses what I'm about to do, and I just hit enter. That works for me. There we go. So now, if we go back into there, every time we ask one of these questions, then it's just going to pop us back to the beginning. So like that. Very simple so far. Now, the next thing we're going to do is make it where it removes one of these topics every time we go back to the top of that conversation. And the way that we do that is we're going to apply a function to our list variable. And this is something that I always have to refer back to the Python documentation on, because I always forget how to do this. But the place that I like to go is w3schools.com. And they have like a whole section on Python lists and different functions that you can apply to lists. So I highly recommend checking that out. But I'm going to show you how to do this real quick. So in order to apply a function to a list, first of all, we're going to let it know that we're using Python code. And we're going to say topics, and we're going to add something called a dot operator. We're basically going to put a period. Then we're going to tell it what we want to happen to that list. And then we're going to put in an argument in parentheses. We talked about arguments in one of the videos before. It just tells you specifically what to apply that to, or just give some extra information as to what you want that function to do. So in order to remove an item from the list, we're going to say topics dot remove, and then in parentheses, we're going to put the item that we want to remove. In this case, it's the weather, and that's it. Topics dot remove, and then in parentheses the weather, and again that's a string, so we have to put that in either single or double quotes. Either one doesn't matter as long as they both agree. All right, same thing down here. We're going to say topics dot remove Stephen, and then finally on this one, topics dot remove Eileen. All right, so now whenever we pick one of these items, it's going to remove it from the list, say the line of dialogue, jump back from the beginning. Then, since that one has been removed from the list, that topic will no longer appear as a topic for conversation. So let us try this, and we'll see how that works. All right, so let's talk about the weather. And then when it jumps back, boom, the weather is gone. And then Stephen. And then Eileen. And that's it. Then we jump back to the beginning, so that'll automatically continue on with your script. And we're going to do one more thing real quick before we wrap up for today. And we are going to add an item to the list. So like I said, you might want to add things to the list. Like if somebody else brings something up, you might want your character then to be able to talk about it. So after we mention Stephen, we're going to do another function. And this one is what we use to add to a list. And the function, the dot operator we're going to use is not add. It's called append, A-P-P-E-N-D. That's how you add an item to the end of a list. So we're going to say topics dot append. And let's talk about us. And then we're going to add that to the bottom. Us, if us in topics. And then she'll say, we just met. There we go. Us. And also in this, capitalization does matter, so be sure if you capitalize something that you leave it capitalized the whole time. Let me see. And actually, yeah, I'm going to leave that the way it is for now. That will be fine. Now let's launch that and play through it. All right, let's talk about Stephen. There, now we have an extra topic at the bottom. There we go. And that one, I didn't put the jump code in, so that just sends us right to the end. But if we wanted them to be able to keep going, then we would just do that. Jump conversation topics, and that'll fix that. And that is pretty much the basics of using lists in Python and a couple of functional ways that you can use those. Be sure to hit a like and subscribe if you got something out of this video. Hit the notification bell also, so you never miss one of my new videos. I'm hoping to start producing content a little more regularly for this channel. I've been focusing mainly on my Daz 3D channel for the last year or so. So be sure to check that one out. I'll link to it in the video description below. So if you need some graphics for that, be sure to check that out, and I'll show you some great way to get some professional quality graphics for visual novels. And if you have any questions, or if there are any topics you'd like me to cover in a future video, be sure to leave that as a comment on the video, and I'll see about doing that. So until next time, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.